So, dear ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to welcome you at Invest in Ukraine conference here in Frankfurt, and we would like to thank Dentons Frankfurt office for helping us to host this conference here. I would like to say some words about the mission of this conference. It is the third conference abroad on this series. First one was last year in New York, several weeks ago it was in London, and today it is in Frankfurt, and in 1 month it will be also in New York. The main mission of this is to promote Ukraine among the international community, among the financial institutions, commercial banks, government banks, the businessmen who are doing business here in Germany and would like to cooperate with their Ukrainian partners. And to say the direct words about Ukraine to the media, so we will have a recording of all our forum, which will be broadcasting on the European Pravda. It's a Euro integration division of Ukrainska Pravda website, and also on Espresso TV it will be also broadcasting. I would like to start with a welcome video speech from Mr. Andriy Sadovy, the governor of Lviv, and he has some welcome words to you.
Hi, my name is Andriy Sadovy. I am mayor of Lviv. I can tell a lot about Lviv, but investor can do it better. Please tell.
Thank you. My name is Theo Schnitvink. I am from the Netherlands. I opened an office here in IT and BPO outsourcing about 5 years ago. Today we are over 150 people, expanding into a new office, and next year I expect to be over 200 people. The reasons for coming to Lviv were strictly business-oriented initially. A great international airport, great universities, so a great talent pool available for my business. Today, Lviv became a lot more for me. The city is incredibly beautiful, very nice people, and you can say that I fell in love with this city. I invite you to really come and take a look yourself, and I'm absolutely willing to meet you face to face to share my experiences and see if I can help you investing in Lviv.
See you in Lviv.
See you in Lviv.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And now I would like to introduce you the General Consul of Ukraine in Frankfurt, Mr. Volodymyr Harchenko, who would say some welcome words. So welcome.
Ich versuche auf Deutsch zu sprechen. Ich habe ein Grußwort auf Deutsch vorbereitet. Ich glaube, alle können das verstehen. So, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste, sehr geehrte Kollegen. Am 27. Juni 2014 hat die Ukraine mit der Unterzeichnung des Wirtschaftsteils des Assoziierungsabkommens mit der EU einen historischen Meilenstein gesetzt. Am 6. September dieses Jahres wurde das oben genannte Abkommen mit den ukrainischen und mit den europäischen Parlamenten erfolgreich ratifiziert. Dies bestätigt immer wieder unsere unüberwindliche Ansichten in der Familie der europäischen Völker nach den Demokratieprinzipien und Wahrnehmung der Rechtsherrschaft zu leben sowie sich zu entwickeln. Trotz der Krisensituation in der Ostregion der Ukraine, die von der äußeren Aggression verursacht wurde, ist unser Staat weiterhin ein interessanter und aussichtsreicher Partner für die Entwicklung der wirtschaftlichen Beziehungen mit allen europäischen Ländern. Es ist sehr angenehm zu betonen, dass diese Konferenz seit der Unterzeichnung des Assoziierungsabkommens die erste Konferenz in Deutschland solcher Art ist. Ich gratuliere allen Teilnehmern dazu. und glaube, dass die Stadt Frankfurt am Main als Veranstaltungsort für die erste Konferenz nicht zufällig ausgewählt wurde. Namhafte Geldinstitute, bekannte Firmen, Konzerne, Ausstellungsmöglichkeiten und auch die Europäische Zentralbank haben ihren Sitz in Frankfurt, sodass die Stadt nicht nur geografisch im Herzen Europas liegt, sondern auch das Zentrum der europäischen Finanzwelt bildet. Wir sind sehr froh, dass Deutschland heute einer der wichtigsten Handelspartner der Ukraine ist. Die Durchführung bei der ukrainischen Seite der Konferenz in Frankfurt ist ein sehr wichtiges Zeichen, nicht nur für das Deutschland, sondern auch für alle europäischen Länder, die die fruchtbaren wirtschaftlichen Beziehungen mit der Ukraine entwickeln wollten. Ich bin auch überzeugt, dass die Teilnehmer an der Konferenz der Vertreter der Delegation der deutschen Wirtschaft in der Ukraine, Europäisches Business Association in der Ukraine, KfW, BASF, Deutsche Bank und andere fühlt mit dem praktischen Inhalt dieses Treffens an und beweist die wirtschaftliche Bedeutung unserer Konferenz. Darüber hinaus die Diskussion über die Möglichkeiten der umfassenden Freihandelszone zwischen der Ukraine und der EU soll man auf der regelmäßigen Basis hier in Frankfurt durchführen. Ich bin auch davon überzeugt. Zum Schluss würde ich allen Teilnehmern der Konferenz viel Erfolg wünschen und eine Hoffnung zum Ausdruck bringen, dass die geplanten Veranstaltungen in der Atmosphäre des Vertrauens und des Geistes des Partnerschafts stattfinden. Ich danke allen für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Havchenko. I would like to read the welcome letter from Mr. Vitaly Klitschko. Unfortunately, he cannot make the video speech because he was very stressed with the situation now in Kiev, but he welcomes you with his official letter. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Kiev City Authority and on my own, I would like to congratulate all the participants of the Third International Conference Invest in Ukraine. Despite the difficult economical and political conditions in our country, we have confidently expressed our willingness to build strong relations with European countries, and certainly one of our priority partners is Germany. We are very glad that this conference takes place in Frankfurt am Main, and that is one of Europe's largest economic centers. Ratification of agreement with European Union on September 16 has become another confident step on the way of the democratic development of Ukraine and its rising as a reliable long-term partner. We are ready to cooperate and open to international partnership in various spheres. At the same time, we realize that the process of formation will not be easy. And for this reason, we are especially looking forward to the support of the European business and financial institutions. I hope that this conference will strengthen existing relationships and establish new contacts. On this occasion, I wish the organizers and all participants success, fruitful cooperation, and further joint projects. Governor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko. So now I would like to introduce our moderator, Alexander Marcus, who will be our great supporter of two discussions this day, and Alexander will have some maybe introductions of our speakers. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, dear ladies, dear sirs. My name is Alexander Marcus. I'm delegate of German economy. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm say a thank you to the A7 group and to the EBRD and to Dentons that they realized this event here and tried to collect people concerning this issue, which is our issue as delegation of German economy, because we are permanently trying already for more than 20 years, convincing and supporting German companies investing in Ukraine and vice versa. More and more we hope Ukrainian companies to support investing in Germany. We have here Mr. Orlik from the KfW, who is the head or country manager from the KfW, the German Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. And Mr. Orlik is the country manager for Russia, Ukraine, Moldova and Belarus. And from Kiev arrived together with me today from Dentons, Natalia Selyakova. But you're not only located in Kiev, you're also in London.
Just in between, we have 75 locations, Denton, around the globe, so
Okay.
that is kind of...
Yeah, nice to have you here, and I would like to start directly into the discussion, okay? I would suggest we have some discussions here in the tunnel, and then I hope we'll have some questions from the auditorium. Mr. Orlik, the KfW was established after the Second World War. It was possible because money which were invested in the framework of the Marshall Plan were returned, and the creditors from the US they didn't demanded those money back, and the German government decided to set up a development bank here, and that is what we have today, the KfW. You are country manager from the whole region, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus and Moldova. We have a lot of political, politically not easygoing times. What is your analysis concerning the macroeconomic situation in Ukraine today?
Okay, thank you very much. Indeed, the macroeconomic situation in the Ukraine is, as everybody knows, quite challenging, but there are also some very interesting developments which give us some hope for the future. Ukraine has for us always been a country which is with great possibility on the rise, but always when we thought it's ready really to start up, then there came some developments which were a little bit difficult, like the last time the financial crisis in 2009 and 10, and from that it was quite a difficult time to recover, and when it was on the edge of recovery, then there came now the crisis with Russia and in the east of the Ukraine. But also within this crisis there are some points we would like to stress, like the comeback of the IMF program with the Ukraine is from our view quite a positive point. There was in the last year quite a difficult discussion between the IMF and the Ukraine on the macro policy. This is now so far fixed, and the program is running, and so far successfully. Of course, the challenge in the east is there, and as long as there is no political solution on the Donbass, there will be a risk in the development of the macroeconomic situation. But generally everybody expects, if there is a solution, that the macroeconomic situation will stabilize. And with the stabilization of this situation, we think that growth will come back, as general possibilities for a good growth is there in the Ukraine. We have quite a good educated workforce. We have quite a substantial industry in the Ukraine, and with a good macroeconomic situation and of course a reform program, there are a lot of possibilities for investors to stimulate the development of the Ukraine. Well, with this, of course, we have to see what will happen after the election. We hope that there will come out a government which takes on the reforms so that the IMF program runs further on, and that the stabilization of the hryvnia and of the foreign exchange reserves goes on, and with that the economic situation for investors will stabilize for the future, and with this I think we can see what is possible with the Ukraine.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Seljakova, you have deep experience in advising your clients in financial transactions and Eurobond issuing and financial restructuring, debt restructuring. You're located in Kiev, so I would like to have some, as we say in Germany, O-tone, original tone from the location. What is your outlook, or if you speak with your clients, what is their outlook for the future, the economic future of Ukraine, and where do you see opportunities, especially in the financial sector where you have your experience?
Right, thank you. Yeah, actually, the profile of our work is dramatically changed, I would say, during the last few years, due to the situation and the way it develops in Ukraine. Still, as we see from our clients, there are a lot of opportunities, and when it comes to the financing, not so much new financing on the agenda, except international financial institutions who are ready to invest and finance the Ukrainian economy. But at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities in distressed debt market, and this is something where our clients are ready to invest. And this is something what is really needed for Ukrainian economy, I would say. Still, I believe good, solid agro-business, IT business, infrastructure projects, this is something which is on agenda and which will be more on agenda with the coming months, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Mr. Oleg, we had the meeting between Mr. Poroshenko, the Ukrainian president, which were elected in May, and our chancellor, Ms. Angela Merkel, end of August. She came to Kiev. It was a very important political sign. After these negotiations, both announced a credit guarantee facility. It was mentioned a 500 million euro framework. We are all very interested what that means. Usually KfW is an operator in this field. Are there any more detailed information on this credit guarantee facility which will be set up between Germany and Ukraine?
Yes, first of all, I think we have really to stress this political sign, and I think also all the negotiation on the political level in the last year, to say, or 9 months, I would maybe say more, has been very much supported by Germany. Mr. Steinmeier, as foreign minister, was always one of the mediators between Russia and Ukraine, and I think Mrs. Merkel visit showed that Germany has a very strong interest in supporting the Ukraine in the will to more orient and integrate into the European Union. And as Mrs. Shevkina says, there are a lot of opportunities for business, and for this whole difficult situation, the German government decided to give this credit guarantee scheme or facility. And it was at that time decided it will be for the reconstruction of the east of the Ukraine, and it is clear that the infrastructure should be at the core of that scheme. Right now there are discussions between the involved German ministries, and I think in the next weeks also with a Ukrainian partner, how to organize the use of that facility. Whether there is also very much involvement of the private sector, and whether there are more government-to-government projects that will be under discussion, and the details will then be given, I think we all have in mind that the election end of October are also a point where sometimes it will be expected what comes out, and then the final details will be announced. But the negotiations are already ongoing, and we are quite positive that the scheme by the end of the year will be ready to be used.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we actually have to, how to say, to be aware that the president, which is becoming more and more famous abroad, he's traveling a lot, but nevertheless he is not the head of the government who is actually executing the laws. The Ukrainian government president can only announce 4 ministers: Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and head of Secret Service, and maybe head of National Council, and that's all. So we may have, after the election, a very new situation. Thank you very much, Mr. Oleg. I would like to come back to you, Ms. Selyakova, to the financial area. We all know Ukraine today has big challenges in the area to defending their national currency. The currency savings the national bank today has in Ukraine, they are too low to really realize or implement intervention policy to hold up the currency. What we see today, and we may later discuss it, what we saw yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a new regulation on the National Bank introduced. How do your clients evaluate this administrative approach on holding up the national currency, and what do you see on already successfully implemented reforms, and what would you recommend for the future?
This is not an easy question, simply because, of course, we have new people in the government and in the National Bank of Ukraine with the best wishes and best motivation to develop the economy and also to develop a financial market. But at the same time, due to the difficult political situation, it's not always easy, and some of the measures which are introduced are not so much popular, I would say. National Bank on a rollover basis now introducing a so-called anti-crisis measures by trying to keep an exchange rate under control and trying to keep outflow of foreign currency from the country. In general, I would say that investors appreciate that these are the measures on a temporary basis and they are justified by the situation. At the same time, some of the measures are really affecting investors, and just recently, ones which are recently adopted 2 days ago would affect probably more. So it's a controversial topic for further discussion, I think, with the regulator, and we see that the regulator is ready to listen and ready to abolish some of the measures. We had already a few examples when measures introduced were quite rapidly abolished after the active discussion with the investor.
Thank you very much.
So just one question. It's the laws or the new regulations. So So Andres Lear from BSF Ukraine. Ukraine in Kiev located, BSF more than 21 years located in Ukraine, and we have good business opportunities and good business running. As just said, there are sometimes some regulations coming, and also now we see it. I'm asking myself why the government and the authorities do this not in advance, discussing with some business circles instead of first interventing a law and then going back again with this.
There might be several reasons. One, because they're under pressure, and there might be some critical indication on the market which made them press them to enact such regulation on a very urgent basis. From the other side, maybe not sufficient tradition still in society to pre-discuss with the business cycles. But again, I believe that when we talk about MBU measures, it's more because they really are under pressure by the market, and on day-to-day basis they monitor what's going on, and they shall probably react very quickly.
For example, if it comes to this regulation, Andreas, would you, if you imagine they would have discussed it, where the restrictions on foreign currency exchange to 3,000 hryvnia per day would have been, you can't discuss these issues, you know, because we'll have a huge queue before every bank, you know. You have to introduce those measures immediately. On the other hand, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of measures in one regulation, and there are some which should have been discussed in advance. Thank you. Maybe, excuse me that I'm insisting, if we again return to the recommendations. Where do you see still possibles? We discussed in the car the already introduced anti-corruption law. Where do you see more opportunities where the Ukrainian government, after the election, surely after the election should concentrate on and should show to foreign investors coming from abroad, we are on the right way, we are on the way that Ukraine is positioning itself as a attractive investment country.
I think Ukraine is really following this route, and irrespective of all these short-term, hopefully anti-crisis measures, there are really good reforms moving on. Just to mention a few of those, there is an anti-corruption law which has been recently adopted. There is also a new law on cleansing of the authority or vetting, illustration law, as we say. So it was a very brave step, I believe, but it was voted by the parliament and now to be signed by the president. There are a lot of laws which aim to deregulate the economy, and I think it's a very good direction which Ukraine is taking.
For example?
Just to give you an example, based on the laws which are already adopted, 50% of regulatory authorities are under liquidation now. Also, when it comes to inspections of enterprises, there was recently adopted a law which provides that any enterprises can be controlled during next half a year, and any inspections can be carried out only by the state fiscal service, otherwise only upon a special decision of the cabinet of ministry of Ukraine. Those who are working in Ukraine, they know that fire inspections, social, whatever inspections are coming and really checking you on a day-to-day basis. So now there is a law which prohibits all these inspections for the next half a year, which gives fresh air and additional opportunities for enterprises to survive and to feel stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are very good directions in which Parliament and government is moving. And in addition to this, when it comes to the financial service, I would say that what is lack and what I would personally recommend, what I feel is absolutely necessary for a financial market, is to have a better law, better regulation for restructuring debt, for restructuring banking system. This is something which is really on agenda in Ukraine, and so far I feel that we are lack of proper regulation.
Okay, thank you very much, Natalia. Dr. Orlik, coming back to you, from your experience in other Eastern European countries, when I speak with German companies in Ukraine, they are sometimes a little bit running out of patience. You know, we had a hype with the Orange Revolution 10 years ago. A lot of companies were coming into the countries. Then we had a lot of changes, political changes, and yet again, crisis situation, being honest, since November last year. You know, our office, ourselves in Kiev, is located 500 meters from the first blockades on the Krishchatik. So we experienced most of the Maidan quite directly. Some companies are a little bit like running out of patience, and they're waiting for quick wins now. From your experience, if you look to other countries, we have this example always, Georgia, you know, with Mr. Saakashvili some years ago coming into the country from the US and doing a lot of reforms. Can you tell us where the Ukrainian government could find such quick fixes or quick wins, which immediately would show some economically successes?
Well, that's always a difficult question, especially for the Ukraine, which is, as I already said at the beginning, has this history that always there's a big hope after like the Orange Revolution, and when this was over, then 2009-10 we were on the rise and the financial crisis came in. And now we are again in a situation with political turmoil, and so what gives us hope for a change and where are quick wins? I think some of the quick wins are already done, as Mrs. Shefyukova said. Some regulators are already abolished, and what we see there is a big reform program in the financial sector ongoing together with the World Bank and the IMF, which we, especially as a bank, see as very important, because the financing of the economy is quite a challenge in the Ukraine. Well, Mr. Saakashvili in Georgia, I think, is a success story, and I think he was in some parts quite radical, and I think, if I remember right, the police had been very corrupt, and I think he abolished every policeman and said you can apply again, but then we make a
total cut,
and look who's really sober to and not corruptive and come back. Maybe this is possible in a country like Georgia with 5 million inhabitants, but with the Ukraine with 45 million, this is really not maybe the right way forward. So quick wins are not that easy in a country like Ukraine, but I think to follow this route on looking into the financial sector to make a clearing of banks which are not really necessary and do not have the capital to run good business. What we think is also there are a lot of monopolies in a lot of areas in the Ukraine, like what we experienced in the past in the wind and solar sector. There were import monopolies, and I think these are very easy things you can rule out with new legislation and on these edges. And what we see, and it was also mentioned that all these rules for business and on inspectorates and this has to be changed, and some things go very fast, but I think there has to be an overall reform of the administration in the Ukraine, which is quite heavy and quite very slow sometimes in reacting, and sorry to say, but I don't think this is very easy and quick to fix, but you have to start and to see how you can change this, and maybe with looking into all these details you find some very easy things to do. But what we see is that at least since March there's a will of the government, and I think this is very new since as far our experience goes over the last 20 years with the Ukraine, really a willingness to make long-standing reforms. And I think even after the Orange Revolution there was not this big change in the administration and in all these legislations, and there were new people there with a lot of hope, but on the really basic problems there was not really hard work, we have to say. And I think at least so far until now there is a willingness to do, and I completely agree that the National Bank is acting from our point of view generally in a very good direction, and there are sometimes decisions which are not so clever to say. I think this foreign exchange law or regulation is definitely not one of the good ones, but also that the National Bank, after discussion with the business community or with other groups, they pull back is also a sign for us, okay, this situation is challenging. And there is, from our point of view, not really a comparative country where you can look into and say, okay, they did this and it's exactly the same we have to do in the Ukraine, especially not on these difficult foreign exchange markets and capital markets. They are very volatile, they are international, and they really have to see on a day-to-day basis what's going on. And generally, I think like the National Bank acted in the last months, that I hope that we will get in and pull back from that regulation. And but we have to see the situation with the East and the Ukraine is also challenging for the economy and for the National Bank to handle. I mean, it's in some parts it's a quarter of the economy which is located there, and this is not easy to handle, and we have to take this into account. But I hope, and this is a quick fix, pull back this regulation would be a recommendation from our side, of course.
Thank you very much. You just said it's difficult to compare with other countries. Nevertheless, benchmark. Do you see any benchmark for Ukraine where they could say, okay, this could be such a country could be our benchmark, and that is where we can at least follow?
Well, generally from what we would like to see, I think from the number of reforms and the time, I think a benchmark which would be interesting, of course, still would be Georgia, because I think it is a success story of one of the former Soviet states. On the other hand,
Georgia today is in the doing business rating higher than Germany.
For instance. But as I said, with the a little bit more difficult situation that we have 45 million of the population, it's a more complex country than Georgia. On the other hand, on a long-term development, I mean, go over the border to Poland and Slovakia, and you see what, with of course a lot of support from the European Union, can make a change. I think if you cross the border, you see the difference in these countries, and I think this is also something the people are looking into, and I think with these twinning program, and I think that's also possible to be used with the Ukraine also not being already a candidate for a European membership, but nevertheless this program came along. I think this was very successful in Poland and in these Poland, Romania, Bulgaria and Czech Republic, and I think then on the very different fields of administration which have to be reformed and connecting them with the administration here in European countries, and gives the experience how good regulation, for instance, has to look like. I think this is a possibility. So for maybe doing business, Georgia, and for the longer term developments, of course, the successful Eastern countries in our neighbors.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are coming here to an end on the panel. I would switch to the auditorium. Maybe one last question, which I also will ask in the second panel, to you both. A vision, Ukraine in 10 years? Can you very shortly just assume what we will see there? Maybe you, Natalia, start.
It's my home country, so of course I see a bright future, and I strongly believe on it, and I believe it will be really a strong democratic European country.
Thank you.
Well, with the solution in the East and stabilizing of that issue and the ongoing reforms, I think in 10 years' time it could be a really strong economy, which a lot of investment opportunities for everybody who's interested.
Thank you very much. Now we are ready please, some questions to the people here on the panel, if you want, also to me. No questions at all? Please.
Normally, if we speak about investment in a new developing country like Ukraine, we know very well that business like a very calm water. Yeah? Today, when the war is running in the country, it's difficult to speak seriously and a lot deeply about investment in Ukraine. But anyway, my question is, I'm presenting a middle-sized German company, and what would be the answer, for example, for such companies like we are, which think in which country they have to invest. Today we have Slovakia, we have Bulgaria, we have Romania, we have Ukraine, we have another country. So what would be, if we speak about Ukraine, attractive for this country? I know that a lot of new members of European Union, they have tried, and this was mostly a success, to attract investors by lowering, for example, taxes, or by reducing the number of taxes. And for me, it's a question from my side to know if we compare the actual tax system of Ukraine and the new regulations, which I think Prime Minister tries to introduce, comparing with other countries. Can we say now that our Ukrainian tax system is already enough attractive for foreign investors? It would be one of the points which can help foreign companies to take decision towards Ukraine, or it's still a problem?
In terms of taxes, I think the level is very competitive for investors to come and invest in Ukraine. In general, the tax system is not very easy. It's a bit complex in Ukraine, but it's been modified, and we have a new regulation, new tax code, and the aim is to simplify the system. So it's not only about the rates, but the system itself. And the same inspections, which are quite a problem for the business in Ukraine. So I think all in all, we are at reform stage, but the taxation system is quite competitive already now.
So, and how many taxes do you have in Ukraine?
I can't say you the number right now, but let me check, and we can discuss it then.
There was information that from 50 or 60 different taxes there will be
Many
reducing
taxes.
to 9 or 10. Is it already done? Is it already?
As far as I remember, it's something about 15 taxes, main taxes, which are now in Ukraine, and
15?
there are 15, 1-5. So there were reductions, of course.
Instead of how many before? I don't know.
Like probably 50,
50,
so it's really simplified. And there is one new tax code which now combines all the different legislation regulating different tax issues, so it's also far more easier to implement and understand, but still not perfect.
So this reducing is already there of taxes?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
When it comes to the number of taxes, yeah, if you compare with those which we had like 5-7 years ago, yeah.
No, I'm not sure.
But let us check, and we can discuss it then during the break.
You know, I represent German company with roots from Ukraine and working since 25 years here in Ukraine. And it was a question about quick wins. I think a quick win for Ukraine government could be routine heroes who will implement good laws adopted, etc. Because what I recognize in the past 20 years, a number of laws, nothing implemented, the final. Yeah. And I think it's a good step, because political heroes benchmark Poland. We see political heroes for 25, 30 years. Valenza and our person from Solidarność. In Ukraine we have running political heroes and no economic heroes. That's all. I think a quick win would be just a routine job. It's just opinion.
So, and maybe also from my side, some comments about quick wins. Of course, when you're looking into the economy, we see different influencers in the country. now the change come from the population. Yeah, that's the Maidan. That was somehow a kickoff for change again. And of course, as said, stable laws and implementation of laws is quite important. However, I also see one important group that are the oligarchs. And the country at the moment is, let me say, steered by 80% of oligarchs to whom this country belongs. Then we can ask ourselves, there are oligarchs or entrepreneurs, let me call it like them. Yeah, we have also entrepreneurs, a group of entrepreneurs which are really willing to change the country and implement things. Then we have a group, what I realize, of entrepreneurs, oligarchs, which do not know where to go, which direction. And then we have a group of oligarchs which just want to stay with the old system.
Status quo. Yeah.
That's status quo. And here I see also a very important point for the future movement. We have the association agreement, Europe, the government, to get the buy-in of the stakeholders of the country, and also to discuss with them how we can move forward the country sustainable. Because if you look into Poland is a country which is driven by mid-sized companies. Yeah? And if you have such a strong concentration of capital in hands, we have to ask ourselves, will there be competition, and how we can implement competition, and what we can do to have fair competition. Yeah, because if I'm carrying out a tender, for example, for an event agency in Kiev, I have always 3 or 4 companies. So I say, hey, I want to do work with more, yeah? So I want to have real competition. Yeah? So the things must be from this side also steered quite properly. That's something what I really see, and we're addressing this also in different industry groups and at EBA also. That's for us, BASF, is important. And when we come to a country, we say compliance. So we closed our doors in Africa some 12, 15 years ago. Now we are back in Africa, so each where we have offices now, Lagos, Kenya again, and so on. Same with Kenya. We say, please play after our rules, or we are not playing here anymore. Yeah? And we are doing this. Yeah? And fortunately, till now, we are able to work in this country after our rules. I have really to say, you can do this in Ukraine. You can work after compliance rules as in the normal world. Question from my side to KfW. So if I'm driving through the country, I see a lot of opportunities for investing, projects to do. So how you collect the project? What are the criteria to get a project, and how to do this somehow together with the business community?
Well, I have to differentiate the different parts of KfW. We have our 2 subsidiaries, the DEG and the IPEX Bank. And as you may know, the DEG is accompanying private business operators which are located in the Ukraine or which are coming out of Germany and are ready to invest there. And they work on market condition, and the DEG can give long-term credits or even share capital for investment in the Ukraine. Nevertheless, as you know, the macroeconomic situation of the Ukraine is still, I would say, to be positive, under work. So far the conditions are right now not very favorable, the credit condition, I have to say, but that's they have to reflect the risk which is there. And on the other hand, if you want to export to the Ukraine, or you have a bigger project planning ongoing in the Ukraine, then the IPEX Bank would be a partner for you, also on commercial conditions. And of course then there are the guarantee schemes of the German government, like Hermes, Euler Hermes, which are included or could be used for projects like this. As a development bank for where I'm working in, this is government-to-government negotiations. So we have some sectors where we are concentrating on, which is the financial sector, which is the communal services, we call it in the main, it's water, and it's energy with energy efficiency and transmission lines we are right now working on, and then the governments agree that we work in these sectors, and then we select projects where the biggest need. This is with government support, mainly credits on favorable conditions, ODA conditions, and or even sometimes in some sectors with grants. And this is the way we're working. But I have to say, until 2013, Ukraine was somehow on the focus, but not in the real focus of the German government, and this has changed, and therefore the whole approach changed. These 500 million. We still do not know whether this will be only a possibility through KfW or also through other banks. This is under discussion. But I think there will be opportunities maybe for business to use that scheme, and we will see what the future will bring. I think within the German government there's an ongoing discussion, and they are following the situation quite closely. And maybe after the election there are further decisions what can be done for the development bank where I'm working on, and if the macroeconomic situation is stabilizing, then I think IPEX and DEG are coming up with maybe more interesting conditions for projects. But as other normal commercial banks are working, you have to see that. But there are possibilities. And then for the DEG and IPEX, it's up to the business to come up with projects. They are not looking for projects, they are accompanying entrepreneurs who are ready to invest in the Ukraine.
Okay. More questions, please. There. We have no more questions, then we'll make a break.
Yeah, so we thank you for our speakers, to Natalia, to Ralph, to Alexander, and we will have some break and then continue to the next discussion. Yeah, thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we would like to continue our discussion, and the next discussion will be about the investors' outlook on Ukraine and business opportunities in Ukraine. It's a very important topic for us, as investors' point of view is very important and unique point of view for Ukraine now, especially in terms of such not easy situation. And also, I would like to inform you that this week is a very unique meeting that will be this week on Friday in Frankfurt. There will be a big delegation coming from the National Bank of Ukraine to Frankfurt to discuss the possibilities of financing Ukrainian financial institution, National Bank, from the German companies, from the German banks. It is organized by the biggest, several biggest German banks, and it's a high-profile delegation. So the head of the National Bank of Ukraine will be here, and we are happy to have such meetings just after our conference. So we hope that investors will have more information about the current situation in Ukraine, and especially in the currency issues. So I would like to welcome Alexander, Marcus, and our honor speakers. And Alexander maybe will introduce our honor speakers of the discussion on investors' outlook of Ukraine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maria. I would like to introduce my partners here. First, it's Mr. Artyom Shevoyov. He's alternate board director for Ukraine with the EBRD, came today in the morning from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Shevolyov. He has a long track record in several countries in Eastern Europe with the bank and with other banks, Ukrainian banks. You're Ukrainian, as far as I understand. Yeah. Then we have Andreas Lehr. Andreas is the head of BASF in Ukraine. Before, he worked on very different locations all over the world for BASF. He is with BASF more than 20 years. And yeah, I'm really happy that he's today here and shares his experience in this beautiful country. My first question goes to you, Mr. Shevolyov. EBRD is the biggest institutional investor in Ukraine. You have a long track record of investing in this country and a big range of investment fields. From the point of view of today, if you look a vision into the next years, where do you see the most interesting investment opportunities in Ukraine from your point of view?
Thank you, Alexander. Indeed, EBRD has been in Ukraine for what now seems eternity. We've been there from the very beginning. We are the biggest institutional investor, meaning that when it comes to the pot of money that the bank has in the country, we're talking about roughly 4 billion euros in commitments and almost 2 billion euros in outstanding operational assets. It's hugely diversified, indeed. We are unique in a way because of our public sector mandate. We are not purely an investment bank. We are owned by states who are shareholders of the bank. So our mandate is wider. We don't do investments purely for the profitability of the investments, but also in order to achieve a certain transition impact in the country, which of course makes our individual projects slightly more challenging, but at the same time, in the difficult situations that we see in Ukraine now, this means that also these projects are much more, have a much bigger demonstration effect. At the same time, we do not finance projects independently. We go there with investors. And this is probably the biggest story because we will only go into the projects where there is specific investor interest. And trying in this respect to answer to your questions, the coming year, the coming 12, 18 months will be very challenging. Our board approved the increase of annual business volume for Ukraine. This year we'll hopefully do around 1 billion euros. But the further progress and the direction of the investment will hugely depend on the reform progress in Ukraine. You know very well the difficulties that the country is facing at the moment. You know very well that the demand for change, the demand for reform is tremendous. You know very well that the changes are happening slowly, or at least slower than many of us and many investors would hope to see. Nevertheless, we believe that even in these difficult times, there are important areas where investors should focus their attention and where financial partners like EBRD could assist. One of them, well, the major one, and not a secret, is of course agribusiness. We have financed a lot of projects in agribusiness in Ukraine. We pride ourselves on not only supporting plain vanilla primary agribusiness, well, basically grain producing. We try to entice investors both foreign investors and domestic investors in Ukraine to go into more value-added segments, processing, logistics. We do have a number of projects in the pipeline, major logistic projects, grain terminals. Again, there are a number of food processing projects in the pipeline as well. At the same time, the major challenges for this particular segment are the domestic investors, the domestic project sponsors are sometimes too weak or untransparent for an international banking institution to support them. And the foreign investors in this segment are, well, they're sitting on the fence. They are waiting to see how the political situation develops because it's a very heavily export-oriented segment, and if the situation politically deteriorates, it will be very difficult to convince them to increase their presence, their exposure in Ukraine.
So it not so much depends on you, but more on your partners.
Well, we try to provide political comfort. That's what I mentioned about the uniqueness of our mandate. But we can provide certain level of political comfort when it comes to Kiev. But I'm afraid we have little we can do with political comfort in Moscow. So if some influence is coming from there, then probably EBRD will be of limited assistance to our partners there. The next big chunk of our attention goes to projects linked to energy efficiency. This is not sector specific because we can see energy efficiency projects in mining, refining, even in agribusiness as well. But when it comes to bringing technologies to Ukraine, which would allow to either achieve supply side energy efficiency, that is producing electricity and heat more efficiently, or demand side energy efficiency when it comes to making sure that Ukrainian, sorry to be a bit technical, but basically energy consumption per GDP unit goes at least a bit lower, because unfortunately that's where Ukraine is an anti-champion, probably world anti-champion in terms of our GDP being extremely not energy efficient. We do finance these projects, both on public side. We do work with the government, we do work with municipalities, but also commercially. There are investors who are interested in bringing such technologies to Ukraine. The environment inside the country, the regulatory environment is good. We see that the green tariffs are there. We see that the energy market is functioning. Well, not without its problems, of course, but at least the background for the development of green energy, alternative energy in Ukraine is present. There is, of course, a major potential for investment in this respect. We have just exchanged a couple of words with Andres here about demand-side energy efficiency, about attracting foreign investors, attracting foreign German companies to Ukraine to implement projects aimed at increasing energy efficiency of Ukrainian households, Ukrainian public buildings. Again, the government pays very significant attention to this issue, and subject to strong political goodwill, we do see this project or this type of projects to be growing in volume in a very limited period of time. These projects are quite easy to implement, so we're talking 6-12 months. We may see significant pipeline of similar projects. Separately, there is a very important area where EBRD is present in Ukraine, but where probably most challenges are as well, which is the banking sector. Ukrainian banking sector is notoriously underpenetrated by foreign investors. The bad stories are well known. The major catastrophe of Commerzbank in Ukraine. Many other foreign banks withdrew after some painful losses. At the same time, this is not changing the big picture. And the big picture is that it's the biggest country in Europe in terms of territory. It's 45 million population, which is a very significant market for banking services. And it's clear that Ukrainian banks are not are not enough and are not prepared to cover such a huge market. However, well, we can have a separate discussion for a number of days about the difficulties and challenges of the Ukrainian banking sector. This is just to say that EBRD is there. EBRD is involved both as an investor in several Ukrainian banks, as a debt provider to a large group of Ukrainian banks, and of course we're strongly involved with the Ukrainian regulator, the NBU, to see that the changes, the reform of the sector is conducive to foreign investment. First thing first, we need to make sure that the banks do not collapse over the coming months. Hopefully, if we go through this turbulent period of, as I said, maybe 3 to 6 months, we would see foreign investment coming into the banking segment later next year as well. In terms of projects in more real sector, it hugely depends on specific investors. I think Andres will have more to say in this respect. EBRD today remains open to looking at projects, well, practically in every area of the Ukrainian economy. I must say we don't do gambling. Everything else, you're more than welcome to come and talk to our offices in Kiev or in London. But again, I'm coming to where I started. A lot will depend on the bigger reform landscape.
Yeah.
If the government shows the goodwill, if the new government after the elections does not fail to translate the goodwill into practical reforms and very speedy practical reforms, we will be there. We're sure our partners from commercial banks, from investment banks, will be there as well. At least the informal discussions demonstrate us that there is an appetite from international financial community, banking community, to support projects in Ukraine. There is a strong will from the capitals to support institutional investment in Ukraine. So the ball is now in the Ukrainian government's court.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chevalyov, for this oversight and the insight into what EBRD is doing in Ukraine. Andreas, you may remember when you came to Kiev and we first met 1.5 years ago, we learned that we both worked together in Russia, me in Moscow and you in Kazan. You told me at the first meeting about your work in Kazan. You did some investment there in Kazan in the chemistry area, and now you're in Ukraine. And your experience after 1.5 years, what fields do you see for your own company, and what fields do you see overall for foreign companies coming to Ukraine?
Okay. Yes, thank you. So we'll say a few words about BASF. BASF is the largest chemical company in the world. Next year, 150-year celebration. In Ukraine, we are since 22 years present with all different chemistries. So chemistry is almost everywhere. We are at the moment 130 employees in the country and covering, as said, many different value chains. And there's a deep value chain knowledge in our company, and we are looking into these value chains, how they develop. And if BASF is looking into countries, we are looking from the overall perspectives, what are the mega trends? The mega trends on the world, that is energy efficiency, smart energy, that is food, feed, and that's urban living. And these mega trends, they dominate also development on a long term of countries. And therefore, for a long-term and mid-term perspective, 5 to 10 years, we are quite positive for Ukraine, and we believe in Ukraine that there will be a lot of things ongoing. So the fundamentals, as we heard, they are in principle there. Yeah, the country has 30% of the black soil of the world. It had a good educated population, 45 million people, and I would assume that the GDP is also higher as it's shown officially, so there's a bit more money than we see always in the official figures, yeah, because it's a different layer in this economy, how it's working. If we are looking into I said the fundamentals, they are good, they are strong, their weakness as energy. Energy is in fact one big topic. Usage of energy for industry and usage of energy for domestic use, for households. And as we also heard, here is the most inefficient country in the world in size of production of 1 unit GDP, most probably 10 times more are used than in Germany. And that's not a competitive advantage, of course, and here the homework must be done. That's quite important in these areas to improve significantly these fields. How to do? We can come later to this. Coming to the fields, what we see also as quick wins, as possibilities for investment. Clearly, it's of course, as we all know, the strategic strengths. That's agro, feed, food. This entire value chain. But if you're looking into this value chain, we still see that the yields are in agro sector only 30% of the yields of, or 40% of the yields of Western Europe. If you're going further to the farming, we see that the farming sector at the moment, they only have 8 million pigs. 20 years ago, they lived 20 million pigs. That means Ukraine is a net importer of pork or of meat. So how it can be, yeah? So that's not value generation, that's value destroying, yeah, so paying someone else for buying meat. And then going further to the food industry within this value chain, there's huge potential if you're looking into this mega trend of 7 billion to 9 billion people in 2050, additional 2 billion people in the next, let me say, 30, 40 years. And there will be huge mid-classes growing up in China, in Africa, in South America, and these mid-classes need to have sufficient food. And we always say Ukraine could be the breadbasket of the world. I see here a great opportunity that Ukraine can play a significant role in feeding this increasing mid-class in this Eastern, in Asian countries. In the next, let me say, 5 to 20 years. Yeah, that's a period we have to see. And here we can learn a lot from Poland. I'm back to this oligarch story. So the oligarch story is, of course, not only partially supporting this food story, because big holdings, of course, they go into food industry, but in order to have a good food industry, you need mid-sized companies, innovative companies. So we have to found the ground for innovative investments. And this can be Ukrainian entrepreneurs, this can be Polish, German entrepreneurs from all over the world. They have to take this opportunity and let the agro-feed food or agro-farming food value chain grow. So that's one big box. Strategic strengths in this area. Strengths of the country, infrastructure, there's water, there's good climate, yeah, everything is available. So that must be used. Another one is what we see is construction industry. As always in the world, you remember 10, 15 years ago, Spain, a lot of construction was ongoing there. That was the locomotive for the country. The same can happen in Ukraine. But in order to do so, we have to get good financing. I mean, if I'm going out to the bank, so I have some bank, I will not say the name, but on this bank I have some deposit. I was happy last year with 20% interest rate, yeah, so now I have a devaluation of, I don't know, 70%, so I lost some money there. However, if you want to get money in order to buy an apartment, you have also to pay this 20+% or something more. That means that's poison for small investors. However, if you're in our village, they are still building apartments. So there is a second layer of money available in the country where money comes from. But if this will be attracted positively by interest rates of, let me say, 7%, 9%, something like this, there will be a boom in domestic apartments, housing, and so on. There will be a real boom, which also will bring into the construction industry. Construction industries, therefore, the value chains should be developed. This opportunity should be also taken up. That means also, again, mid-sized investors. We have companies like Henkel, Knauf, Dückerhoff, Heidelberger Cement, and so on, but there's much more potential for German, for European investors to become present there. And also for insulation material. Probably we should make an initiative for a European insulation producer and say, look, this country is inefficient, you can gain money, invest into insulation boards. And then styropor, styrodur, all those XPS, EPS, polyurethane systems, they must be produced there instead of buying from outside. And there's something regulation. So again, food, feed, farming, construction. Interestingly, we see now as BSF also one very important point is consumer goods. We see that despite the crisis, our businesses are quite good developing at the moment with local consumer good producer. They produce different things, cosmetics, something to eat, some hair stuff, cream and so on. And that's related to the fact that imported goods became by far much too expensive. So we see growth at the local producers of consumer goods, and we have not many business units at the moment which are growing, but this one belongs to a growing business unit. We say, wow, despite crisis, we have a growing business unit, and I'm happy that we have this. Yeah? And that's not only about export, that's about local content, local use, local production. A third one, or fourth one, what I see that might sound strange, that's automotive. Yes, we know automotive, there is one factory that's ZAS, Zaporozhye. They have a relatively good equipped factory. I visited quite often this factory. However, it's not easy for this company at the moment. But there's another thing between this is local, that is production of parts for the German European automotive value chain. Component production. Yeah? And that means if the country will be able to integrate into existing value chains, such as the German Central European one, yeah, in this part, for example, it could be a real springboard for accessing new markets and modernizing the industry. That would be also a fantastic opportunities. And of course, the transformation of the energy-intensive industry to a light industry, investments, this is also important. And now it's a chance for the country to repool and to reposition themselves. But it's not easy. It needs support. And we have really, as business communities and also as communities of banks and institutions, I often say we have to do more roundtables, and that we are really all going in the right direction. Yeah? That we are working in a joint agenda. This might be now an initiative which the industry, which associations can take in their hand, and we should not wait on this. We just should do this. Yeah? It's my comment. We should do this, and we should be part of developing the businesses. And of course, we heard a lot about politicals. The country also should and must develop into the east direction, because there are value chains which are very much linked with Russia. And here I really also hope that there will be found a consensus, because both can only benefit from each other. Yeah? And if this will be the possibility, I'm quite sure Ukraine will work like a bridge, and also business can work like a bridge and interlink the different partners, because there's no more fun in making business, yeah, and let something grow. Yeah? And here's a lot to do. And just one small story from my life. I have two boys, 14 and 16, and sometimes I have the feeling they will stay in the country. They know it's an international school. I say, hey boys, there's no place in the world you can do more than Ukraine. And that would be a lot of fun. So that was just some comments from me, and might be more for discussion.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Mr. Shevalyov, we have now, we are representing German businesses, and Andreas mentioned that we have approximately 20,000 workplaces set up by German automobile component producers in Western Ukraine. I'm always telling the Ukrainian side, you do not even understand that you have the basis for an automobile cluster in Western Ukraine. You're looking to Zaporozhye, you want to produce cars, but start with the component production. The component production could be competitive. Car production will not be competitive during the next, I don't know, 10 years. And the market is too small for car production. But what I hear from German companies, and it's a little bit the same what Andreas says, they say today what Ukraine actually needs is some sort of Marshall Plan. And the foreign countries, the US, the EU countries, they should together and should consider something like a Marshall Plan, what Germany had after the Second World War. What is your opinion? How do you see that from your EBRD point of view? Is this the right approach? Do we need something different?
It's a very good question. It's a huge topic in itself. Because EBRD is what it is, a public sector financial institution. A huge part of what we do in Ukraine and what we have been doing for many years is policy dialogue. We, together with other IFIs, World Bank, IMF, bilateral partners, Germany, United States, France, United Kingdom, we do work with the government in order to try and make sure that there is a systemic approach to reform. I don't think it will be fair, and it is the format to vent our grievances about how this process is going. But the Marshall Plan for Ukraine is a great idea if it's not an idea focused on itself. Plain Marshall Plan, which will say that we'll give Ukraine X billions euros to restructure its economy and increase its competitiveness, will fail if it's not accompanied by a comprehensive reform effort within the country. As a Ukrainian, it hurts me to say that, but for the past 24 years, we have not managed to build a country which will have some problems that can be addressed with the targeted reform. Unfortunately, the deficiencies are systemic. In this respect, the Marshall reform, the financial part of such a plan is only an element. The huge part of such an international effort should be supporting the government and supporting the president in implementing reforms in the country, which very often will be extremely painful. The businesses and the sectors and the clusters that you're talking about, most of them were established not thanks to the government support, but actually contrary to the government's efforts. I'm sure that many Ukrainian businessmen you talk to would say that they are successful because government haven't noticed that. We need to change that. We need to make sure that both foreign investors and domestic investors see the government, see the state as a partner in their projects. If it's not a financial partner, because unfortunately the state budget has very limited capacity to support investment, there's EBRD, there's World Bank, there's KfW. There are other institutions which are specifically targeted to support this kind of investment. The government should just create a climate or environment where such investments would flourish. And we're talking about a very short horizon. We're talking about steps that should be taken within weeks and months rather than years. Everybody has to do their bit. We have just been discussing with Alexander that, for example, EBRD has been struggling to work with the government and failed with the previous government. We are more successful with the government in place now to establish an institution of a business ombudsman, which will be an independent body inside Ukraine, which will not be subordinate to any government official or any authority, and which main task will be to defend the interests of investors inside the country, not only foreign investors, domestic investors as well. It's sad, but it's true, that in 2014 we're only establishing such an institution. There is no single body in Ukraine that would work, that would perform this function. If BASF has a problem, they would probably go to, I don't know, German Embassy, European Business Association, or to Alexander, yes, to help, to ask for help in addressing a specific issue, which is not how things should be done in the country if the country tries to attract this investment. The Marshall Plan as such, again, I'm sorry, on a personal level I just don't like the name because we're not trying to replicate something. We're trying to make things work in Ukraine, and it has too many specifics which are different to Europe of 1945, 1946, 1947. We should focus, and now I'm going to what Andres was saying, we should focus on the areas of competitiveness. We may not see them, we may not notice them, or we may think that it's too difficult to develop them, but Ukraine still has a lot of segments where the potential, well, the existing competitiveness or potential competitiveness is very, very significant. And the investment that is required is relatively small. It, again, just don't build any hurdles for the investors, and they will find themselves where they want to invest their money in order to achieve their profit. The value chains that you were referring to, I think it's great, and I'm pretty sure that if there is a roundtable or an expert group which specifically tries to focus on looking at the areas where such value chains could be created, they will come up with a number of other ideas. The automotive sector, again,
from your experience, is there something what the state should do to, for example, tackle holes in the value chain where they see it?
Well, again, I'm sorry, but probably you've already noticed this is a topic which I'm very focused on. I think it's a bigger question of business climate. This is a bigger question of investor climate. It's if the government, if the state allows investors to operate, it's one of the basic principles of capitalism. You know? The investors will find the places where their investment is most efficient. It probably would be wrong for the government to choose which areas they love most and where they want the investors to come. I mean, there are exceptions. I mean, for example, something we haven't mentioned, oil and gas, which is an area in Ukraine which is hugely underdeveloped, but which will probably attract little investor interest if the government doesn't provide some specific support or some specific incentives. But in principle, it's about a bigger picture of business climate.
Thank you very much. Andreas, you may remember we had a meeting with German Secretary of State's 5 deputy ministries in last April this year, We had a business meeting with representatives of German businesses in Kiev, and it was seldom case that 5 deputy ministers from Germany came together. There was something like a support plan for Ukraine. And you had a very provocative thesis at this meeting. You said to those politicians, we need to do something and we need to do it very quickly. Let's take 500 million euros state money from Germany and EU and, for example, bring up energy efficiency in I don't know how many 10,000 households in Ukraine. That would be a quick win before the winter comes to use less gas, less Russian gas, and to which the people just feel directly. We see the figure today again, but in a different framework as a credit guarantee. But for me, it was very interesting. That's just the same figure you mentioned at the meeting. Nevertheless, what do you see from your point of view? Is there something where the EU, the US, and especially Germany should commit themselves more than they do today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes I think personally there must be done much more. There is huge work. We should not underestimate this, and probably it is underestimated, still underestimated. It was never seen like this, how big the tasks are. However, if you bring it in the relation from the GDP size to a region in Germany, I will be not provocative again, but it will be somewhere in the size of, let me say, Stuttgart and Mannheim, something like this, 150 billion. So that's in principle, you can handle this. Yeah? It should be handled. It's most probably only a wish. If Europe, if America, and Russia, if all together, will say now we are doing something with the country, I'm quite sure we can quite quickly develop this, and also with the association agreement, with efforts which are ongoing, they are quite good. External support is needed, but also, as said, there's internal support needed. There must be a clear frame. We often forget that Ukraine has a rank of corruption index of 144, what is the same than Congo or Eritrea or something like this. And this must be changed, sustainable. And the government and the institutions must provide here a field like really walks the talk. What is said must be done, and it must be done quickly. That there will be a business climate that investors see this, and then we can go promote the things what should be done, and also from outside different project steps must be done. And of course, auditing is also, from my perspective, quite important, that it will be audited what is happening in the country, that there will be institutions which are really working. And that's important because at the moment, there are great people in Ukraine, but I'm a bit afraid that there's still a danger that the society can fail. So that is something like this, that as an entire building is, due to this corruption, it's not really working closely together. There must be a bit of change of we are taking over the responsibility, and this must be coming from the top. That must be shown everywhere. And then with the Maidan, they took some responsibility. Exactly. That was but this drive must be kept. And it must be also now follow up. And there must be like an agenda, a working agenda, like you do it in a company. You have targets, you have milestones, you're working through this. And then you say, we have done this, we are doing this and that and that. And also the country must understand this. And also from outside, European Union, all these supporters which are working there also have to have a roadmap, a real roadmap for the country. And that I'm still missing. There's no roadmap. When I'm going to UAE, the first I'm doing in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, you go there to a ministry and they show you the roadmap. Yeah? There's a construction industry, then you have here Emirates Airlines, then you have this and that are the tools, and they're putting this together. Yeah? And this roadmap is not there. I've not seen this roadmap. Yeah? Probably there's a roadmap, but it must be also published. And if you're going to UAE or to Saudi Arabia or other countries, they are showing me the roadmap of the country.
Isn't there the risk, excuse me that I interrupt you, isn't there the risk to design a roadmap which will never be implemented, because there have been so many plans before in Ukraine which have never been implemented?
That's right. Now we have a unique chance, again a unique chance that there's a certain attention now worldwide, and that such a roadmap can be now designed together. It's now a buy-in of different stakeholders, which takes then over responsibility for Ukraine and say, yes, that's my target agreement. As Europe, that's my target agreement. As this or that association or this and that government, that's my target agreement, and I'm working on this target agreement. And I think that all the initiatives are coming together, or somehow coming together. I see the danger also, there's taking something, there's a part doing, there's a part. The bigger the problem is, the more it must be consolidated and put together. You know? Mm-hmm. And sorry, and also we're coming back to the gas. I mean, the country will automatically grow. Just think about this. Automatically grow by 2% if the gas bill will reduce by 5 or 10 billion cubic meters. So we have now 50 billion cubic meters gas. 20 they produce by themselves. 30 billion are imported. Most probably, if they are energy efficient, they do not even import gas. No need. With all the shakers, they can even export gas. Yeah? So at first, growing by the gas bill 6% without consuming so much gas, and then if they export, so they can just grow by 10% by gas without any industry value chains. And then if you look into the corruption topic, I don't know if the corruption will be stopped, but I heard often figures that there's even no money from IMF necessary, because if everything will be used internally.
We had just a meeting with the German ambassador, where he told that currently the tax income and the custom income is growing. With the crisis situation, from Germany we have 32% import from Germany into Ukraine down in comparison to the same time in the last year, and the customs income is growing. That says something about
that says something, and also what I said, the layers of the industry. Yes, there's an official figure, but if you're in the country, you say no, that can not be true. And there's a huge portion of unofficial figures. The people are driving good cars, they have good houses, and so on. Yeah, so I mean the country is by far richer than shown officially, yeah? And that we also often forget. And it has a by far stronger immune system developed in the last year, what we also see. And now it's about making it more officially, giving it more to the society what is there, and make the processes work and creating trust. There is a huge core of people which want to have this new society. And if this will be taken, this drive, I'm quite confident that something others will develop, but it needs support, yeah? Support from different angles and stages, and the wish and the willingness of many people to change this, yeah?
You wanted to add something?
Well, yes, there were actually two comments that I wanted to make on what Andrea just said. I'll start with the second one on the roadmap. We were just having this discussion with Alexander in the Dentons area, remembering the charismatic Georgian Minister of Economy Kaha Bendukidze, and I've met other members of the Georgian cabinet of these years, and actually they're rather critical of the roadmaps. Mm-hmm. They said when in 2004, 2005 we had all the problems, we were just getting together in the room and we decided that here's a problem and we tackled that problem. And he said, half jokingly, that look, if we spent our time developing roadmaps for the decades to come, we would have done nothing on the problems that were important at that moment. So there should be a balance. I'm not saying that we should forsake the long-term strategy for the tactical steps, but I would probably insist that Ukrainian problems today are grave enough to justify emergency response.
Exactly.
And the strategic development, the big roadmap, should probably come as a second step, or happen in the background. But then to build on that, but also to address the issue of, for example, the energy efficiency project or potential project that Alexander mentioned. I think what is critical now to understand is that Ukraine is suddenly again in the headlines. Ukraine is commanding a lot of interest politically, financially, but it's a very fragile situation. I mean, things happen. Things happen in Syria. There are forthcoming Congress elections in the US, and God knows what else might happen elsewhere in the world. So we should capitalize on that. And in order to do that, we would rather make sure that there is a very strong coordination on the investor community, on the donor community, and on the demand community inside Ukraine. And I think that's where business associations matter a lot. Individual large investors like BASF matter a lot, and of course the governments of Germany, France, US are hugely important. All these players, including EBRD, including World Bank, should get together regularly, together with the government, and make sure that we are targeting specific issues efficiently. There is a huge danger of, with a lot of funding, technical assistance money from Germany and technical assistance money from EBRD and from Japan providing a lot of money. Canada is coming up with some money. Everybody's coming up with bits and pieces, and there is a huge. It's very tempting to take the low-hanging fruits. Everybody will be doing something that's obvious, but it will be done very inefficient.
That was, by the way, one of the first statements from our secretaries of state in April when they visited Kiev. They had a long list of projects during the last 20 years where the German government invested on different reforms in Ukraine. And the first statement was, sorry, Ukraine is over-consulted. There's no implementation and too much consultants. But if you have questions, please join in. Maybe one issue I would like to continue. Andreas, you picked it up, but I would like to start with you. Association agreement. We today have the situation, the political part has been ratified by the Ukrainian parliament. The economical part is unilateral, working for the Ukrainian companies. They can, at the zero level for most of the goods, import into the European Union. Vice versa was said it will come at the end of 2015. What will be the outcome from your point of view? Won't that have an effect on foreign companies who are still hindered in doing successful business in Ukraine because they have to pay the import taxes?
Well, I'm rather more optimistic in this respect. I think DCFTA is a great opportunity for both Ukrainian businesses and foreign investors. Foreign investors, of course, it's probably a simplified picture, but foreign investors, this is a great opportunity to go to Ukraine, take what is there in terms of competitiveness, which is, let's admit it, cheap labor, available infrastructure, very often cheap infrastructure, and produce goods at much lower cost, and then export whether to EU or elsewhere. and DCFTA changes nothing. Well, changes nothing to the worse. It rather improves the overall environment, bringing the Ukrainian regulations closer to the EU standards. For the Ukrainian producers, it's a very significant challenge, but there is a very narrow but very important area of attention where EBRD is trying to act, but also is trying to bring in our partners, which is, if you call it association education. We need to train Ukrainian businesses and Ukrainian producers how to make use of the Ukraine's association agreement with the EU. Sometimes it's necessary to take some practical steps to improve their technology, to improve their equipment, and, well, respectively, to finance such a modernization program. But it's surprising, but a vast majority of Ukrainian businesses have no idea. I mean, they're very happy that the association is now signed, but they have no idea how this could benefit their specific businesses.
Yeah, okay. What is your point of view, Andreas? You are an importer of goods, and you will pay for another 14 months these import goods.
Yes, you're right. On the other hand, I do see this part not so critical. More important is that the association agreement is opening a frame for modernization, for doing business according to certain standards, and it also should open the frame of giving more entrepreneurship to the people, to the Ukrainian people. But here we are also at one stage where we have to say, okay, it gives sooner or later a certain frame for the people, and they are entrepreneurs in Ukraine. But from my perspective, what I've seen, unfortunately, not enough, because the opportunity to grow up in the past into these dimensions was somehow not given. I would say it was somehow a bit frozen in the last 10-15 years, taking this opportunity. Where I see, so I'm married with a Polish woman, and I see that Polish people took much more entrepreneurial. So to get this entrepreneurial spirit free and bring the people there that they say, yes, I'm willing, also now taking the risk, that will take some time. That's about education. But that's also, of course, about financial frame, that the people will say, I will take now a credit, and I have the ability that this credit will be not next month from 5% to 20%. That I have stability in my investment frame. And if this environment will be given, we will see also outside of the country significant development coming from the people, because there is entrepreneurial energy. As said, there might be the one or other corner where the people can a bit improve in doing the business things, but however there's a good basis, because the educational level is good. And if this, and that's from my perspective also one of the most important quick wins we can achieve, a stable finance system. If there will be a signal, Grivna is stable, credit will be given for 7 to, 9%, something like this. This will be a real quick change, and it should be not a too big effort to achieve this. I mean, if all the financial institutions, important institutions, sit at the table and say, what can we do with the Ukrainian financial system, and in order to get here a stable financing frame. If this is achieved, that will be also, by the way, from my perspective, a clear signal. It's the same probably with visa freedom, that the things are moving. If these things are coming together, financial system stability, something with the visa, that will be quick signs, wins, and giving also spirit into the population.
Visa freedom is a political question.
Political question, yes. But I mean, these are signs, signals. Yeah.
I agree, but the problem is that again, we're back to square one about the big picture and the big reforms.
Yeah.
Because if you get the financial institutions, and I'm speaking of the financial institution, you get them to the table and you tell them, look, we need to finance the entrepreneurs, we need to finance small and medium-sized enterprises, we need to finance innovative businesses, and it has to be at 7-9% interest. The banks will say, you're out of your mind. How my creditor rights are not protected. I don't know what the regulator will do to me in the next, how much of my currency, how much of a forex risk I'm having because of the policy of the national bank. I mean, I agree, but that's why systemic approach is important. And what I'm probably trying to say is that it's absolutely, it is an absolute must that the big players, like your company, like other international conglomerates, the business associations, that the governments of respective countries do work together with the Ukrainian authorities to make sure that such systemic approach does take shape and is implemented. It's trying to tackle the problems on each individual, small individual levels, I'm afraid will not work.
The funny thing is, and now I have to mention something as a moderator, that the Ukrainian government, they ask, why is there no working Ukrainian business association? Why do we have to work only with the foreign business associations and we have no strong voice from the Ukrainian business association? That's what...
Well, there is a Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, but it's a business. And if people get together to make money, not to defend their members, then something's wrong with their system.
Questions, please.
Well, the question is to systemic challenges. Andre's question is, how you see chemical industry in Ukraine? There's a long tradition and number of people working here.
So, chemical industry in Ukraine is in fact an important industry, approximately 5 to 6% of the GDP, something like this. Not as important as of steel or other, of course, but it's playing a role somehow, 5% I would say. But it's more the commodity part which is produced there. There is the fertilizer industry playing a huge role. Other commodities, okay, that was in the past titanium, different things like this. And the challenge of this industry is also its efficiency. Yeah? So how much money you put in and how much money you get out, because a fertilizer industry is of course driven by energy, that's gas.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and Ukraine and the companies, I cannot answer this question, has of course to make their analysis about the sustainability of this chemical value chains. They have of course an important role because the agriculture market is big. Right? That's for sure, and therefore fertilizers are important from the demand standpoint. But I also see good opportunities in the chemical industry to develop the one or other, I would say, transport-intensive chemistries in Ukraine. So everything what is related to logistics can be done in Ukraine. Yeah? There are different construction materials, mixtures, might be some paints, dispersed paints we see quite often, Henkel, Tico, Miller, all those companies already there, yeah, playing a role. And there in this consumer close chemistry, we see much more potential, consumer close chemistry. Of course, there's now a certain challenge also with investments of all global players, but not only in chemistry. That's the definition of markets. And imagine you want to build a plant somewhere in Kharkov, yeah, or in Donetsk. Companies think about markets as my next salary destination is then Astrakhan and Rostov and so on. Yeah? And if there's an uncertainty, that's not good for the investments. The same vice versa. Yeah? If Russian if companies invest in Russia, they think also in markets. Yeah? in rooms, in logistic rooms. And at the moment we are facing for the industry situation where I say that's not good. That markets are separated more geographically, politically. Yeah? And I hope that everyone understands that this is not good for investments, because company makes an investment decision not based on one country. They think in rooms. Yeah.
We have almost no countries, German countries, leaving Ukraine today, but we have a problem that German companies produce in Ukraine and formally selling 70–80% of their production to Russia. And yeah, the doors are closed. Even if there are no official sanctions, practically there are no goods going into the country from Ukraine anymore, so they really have to reconsider whether they have to relocate to Russia, because it's nevertheless it's 80% of the market. Of their production share of what they produce in Ukraine. And that is a big problem for countries.
I'm sorry, or to make orientation for another markets, not only for Russia.
I beg your pardon?
Or to make orientation to focus on another markets, not only Russia.
For sure, yes, but
what
the
has
problem
to
is
urge
that
the companies to do.
then you most likely do not relocate in Kharkiv or Donetsk. Because it's not, you don't need, because you rather go to Lviv or, I don't know, Volinsk.
I mean, for example, BASF is located in Ludwigshafen, that is trading on the worldwide business. It's not a location which is important in that case for global companies.
But they're not producing everything in
So
Ludwigshafen.
we have 400 plants globally, and we have big plants. The same like in Ludwigshafen, we have in Kuantan the big size. In Nanjing, in Freeport. So there's big plants, and then everywhere in between smaller plants, depending on the needs, the requirements of being close to the customer with some solutions, and transportation costs. That are the important things. Solution, transportation cost. And if you bring this, then you have to say, I'm going in the market. Yeah? Of course, I mean, the big claims, we all know, yeah? Automotive plant, chemical big plant, that will be not invested somewhere for some reason. Yeah? The big claims that are set on the world. But there are a lot of opportunities for consumer close investments, for entrepreneurial investments. As said, export substitution is an important point. Yeah? I mean, now we see this. Consumer goods are less and less imported from foreign countries. They are doing this now in Ukraine because of the hryvnia. Yeah? Still, meat is imported. Yeah? Chickens are flying to Ukraine. Yeah? I mean, all these things. Yeah? This must change. Yeah? And then we are back to invest in Ukraine. Yeah? And there are a lot of things to do, a lot of opportunities, but depending on the frame. Yeah? Walk the talk, setting the frame for investors. So why should I spend money if I'm not secured? Yeah? If next time I get a radar attack or something like that, so what? Yeah.
One question from my side. We have a European Union, which I'm calling, we actually have a European Union of regions. Because the national function is more and more going to Brussels, and the regions are becoming more and more developed and becoming more and more important what the regional administration is thinking about the development of their special region. We had the discussion with Scotland, they wanted to become even independent, Catalonia. If you look at Ukraine into the regions, is there anything where you say there are preferable regions where you would today say they are more interesting than others, Andreas?
I would say each region has its advantage and good possibilities. Kiev itself, yes, it has a quite good educated population. There's purchasing power, of course. There's stronger competition. That's also good. There's a good network of things which are already operating. Dnipropetrovsk has a quite good opportunity, and from my perspective still significantly under-evaluated the opportunities in Dnipropetrovsk. It's very good located. It has a sufficient functioning financing industries already somehow running with bank sector. There are good opportunities, and it's very good located. Also, but there should be more highways, good airports, this infrastructure things. That's important. Western Ukraine, of course, with its strong link already to Western value chains. If you are looking to
Mr. Sadove from
Lviv, that we see already, they are defining themselves. Odessa, I see also much more opportunities in this region. In fact, Mykolaiv, Odessa region. And the big opportunity for Donetsk, Mariupol area to completely reposition and repool its value chains and economy. But here then we are also back to economic zones and rooms. It can be an economic zone and room together with Rostov-na-Donu, for example. Yeah? So, and that's something where also the neighboring conflict must be solved in a midterm, because regions are working together. Yeah? So I mean, Strasbourg is working with Freiburg somehow in some areas. Yeah? We all know this. Yeah? That's important. Yeah? So there's a disadvantage if Donetsk will start to work with a very far western region. Yeah? So there's always this logistic topic. Yeah? Also being close with the people. Yeah? Not knocking at the next door. So I mean, thinking more in economic regions, and that's exactly what happens in Europe. What we are doing. Yeah? So we are not thinking which country belongs to which and so on. We are thinking more in regions, in economic zones. Yeah?
In your investment track record, is there
well, first of all, based on our track record, but also being Ukrainian, probably I would tend to partially disagree with Andres, particularly on the eastern Ukraine, because I think that a lot of the perceived closeness of eastern Ukrainian regions and southern Russia, Rostov-on-Don, is a biased view. It's a biased view. It's not. It doesn't stand to the economic facts. Actually, based on EBRD experience, we have a number of projects where there is strong competition between producers in southern Russia and producers in eastern Ukraine. They are rather strong competitors than partners. On the other hand, there's no denying the fact that just by virtue of its size, there has to be some form of geographical differentiation within Ukraine between the regions. I think create the business environment that the money will come and the money will choose where they want to invest. Probably the area which is most challenging is oil and gas and mining. Unfortunately, everything that has to do with mineral resources in Ukraine has been disregarded for a very long time, mostly for political reasons. During Soviet times, the exploration has been more focused on Russia, on Siberia. That's why the exploration, oil exploration, gas exploration, minerals in Ukraine has been underinvested for a long time, even in Soviet times, and of course it has been practically saw zero investment in the last 20 years. We know that things are there. Getting them out is hugely expensive and challenging, but then I come back to what I said about the infrastructure. And there are a number of projects that we've seen at the EBRD. We're talking industrial size, billion-dollar projects. And when we ask the investors, but why Ukraine? I mean, you can get it much cheaper in Africa or in Mongolia. They say, yeah, but it will cost us 10 times more to construct the road from the nearest port or nearest railway to our iron ore pit. because it's just in the middle of nowhere. Ukraine, because, again, partially because of the geography, partially because of the Soviet legacy, has a very strong infrastructure which is already in place. And of course, sometimes you can question the quality of this infrastructure, but it's there. It's cheaper to repair than to build a new one. And I think, again, this is one of the competitive advantages that the investors should be looking at.
More questions, please.
I have
Yes,
a
please.
maybe some kind of branches that are not so popular in Ukraine nowadays, but say maybe they would have a perspective for the future. What do you think that could be that you can say as an investor, oh, here's something for me?
Who wants to answer?
So, to understand it right, not so popular.
Yeah,
this-
so maybe nowadays they're not so developed, but for the future they could be interesting. What could it be?
So not so developed. Yeah, as said already, the food industry is somehow developed, but there's much more potential to develop this.
Food processing, yeah.
Food processing industry, yeah, to make to create value in the country. That means taking wheat, taking corn, making something higher value out of this instead of exporting the wheat or corn to Bangladesh or Egypt, taking this and generating value. Of course, there's an issue that in order to grow a pork in Germany, it's half a year, and in Ukraine it's a year. So there's a big efficiency task, yeah, to come up there. But this must be manageable. Yeah. So the strengths of the country are there. So food industry, that's in fact one topic which can be done much more. Yeah. I would not say it's probably it's even underdeveloped at the moment. Yeah. There's already a food industry, but much more to do. And of course the entire insulation industry. I mean, there is no insulation industry there. So if I'm looking there, there's almost no board producer who's making some styropor boards or some boards from EPS, XPS, something like this. There's some companies a bit spraying around with polyurethane, but that's it. So all those things are imported, and there are mid-sized companies. To attract this mid-sized company coming to Ukraine and say, hey, you can produce your insulation material here, yeah? Like glass wolle, this fiberglass and stuff like this. All those things, I do not see this in Ukraine. Yeah? And there's no technology at the moment available there.
Knauf had a plan. They have a company, Knauf Installation. They even had a land plot,
yeah.
But they didn't build the factory because the crisis 2008-2009 came, and the building market just vanished.
Can you just try and complete the answer? If I understand the question correctly, it's very tempting to say, let's build something new, let's build a knowledge economy. Everybody will sit in IT silos in these beautiful, clean, white offices and create apps which Google will buy for billions of dollars. That's all nice, but if you have 45 million people which have to eat and to have to switch on their computers and have electricity there, in order to develop these applications or high-tech IT product, and all of this has to be imported, then it's not a functioning model. I mean, it's not Estonia. Let's put it this way. It's quite easy to build an IT hub in a small country. It's virtually impossible to build it in Ukraine. You can do this on a regional basis or even municipal basis, but not as a model for a whole economy.
We have a lot of IT, we have a lot of outsourcing IT, especially what we saw today in Lviv. It's more and more developing. We had beginnings from that in Kharkiv. We had in Donetsk and Lugansk, but we have all German companies pulled their teams out of it because it's impossible for IT people to work without internet and without electricity. But one area, and it's really a pity that I have to see that, to say that, one area where I see, how to say, business coming, it's military. Yes? Unfortunately.
There's technical.
We really have to say that, unfortunately. But all discussions we have with Ukrainian official public representatives, they suggest to us that we go to Germany and invite German companies into military projects. I say,
So,
okay,
And
it's not our business.
What do you mean exactly? Defense industry or a military corporation?
They are proposing defense industry.
Oh, but if you're talking about specialties, that's where specialty lies in Ukraine, in Kharkiv. There is tremendous scope indeed to build a competitive strength there. But well, I mean, now we'll go into a completely different discussion. Unfortunately, it's too influenced by our neighbors.
Yes.
I mean, seriously doubt they will be happy with the German companies going there.
This is a very strong legacy from Soviet time and very well developed defense industry and open no switch between Western technologies, NATO-based technologies, and former Soviet technologies.
So yeah, there are opportunities, but also huge challenges in the areas you said. I mean, if you're looking into the machinery industry, Kharkov, very much linked to Russia, also the wagons, the value chains. Steel industry, yeah, I mean, with the big challenges from China and India and so on, difficult. Of course, they're backward integrated to iron ore and so on. But this will be more reconstruction or restructuring topics. And then we also have military, Antonov at the moment. I do not know where they will go, so we will see. So there are a lot of challenges of repositioning also existing industries, but also a chance, might be opportunities that the German machinery industry sees also some cooperation opportunities with Krakow machinery industry. I cannot judge on this. Steel industry, that's of course, as long as the steel prices were high, was good. Now the steel prices are low, is a problem.
I suppose that still today, with not very easy track record, then you will have to buy some years to build up trust.
Yeah.
Because you really will speak about corporations in the industrial area.
But I think the important thing was already said by Andreas. I think the immediate focus should be on import substitution, from basic stuff as in food supplies to more advanced things. For example, in steel industry, there are examples when Ukrainian steel factories produce very basic products and then export that into German factories where this is rolled into more complex elements and are brought back to Ukraine to be used, for example, in railway carriages construction, which is ridiculous. I mean, all of that could be done in Ukraine with very limited investment. It's just a question of getting the investor in.
This is the same for defense. I think this is a more political willingness from German government. We're working with Rheinmetall since a long time, and Rheinmetall had plans in Kharkov, but no political willingness from the German side.
Maybe
from business, yes. From in this sensitive sector.
Other more questions?
Artem, do you have already or a plan to have some, let me say, programs for regions of Ukraine or regional programs?
We work based on individual projects. We have a number of regional business development events planned, trying to promote EBRD to businesses outside of Kiev and other major cities. As in specific regional projects, on the public sector, we do projects with individual municipalities, which are focused on energy efficiency. We've done one in Ternopil. We had one for Luhansk, which is now very not likely to happen. But it's I think it depends on the individual businesses. If there is a good project, it's more or less irrelevant where it's located. Well, there is one important caveat. We are talking to the government, not only us, other institutional investors as well, on the potential reconstruction of the conflict zone. That will be clearly focused on the areas which are now under control of the Ukrainian authorities in Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast, but looking to finance the reconstruction of the damaged infrastructure and industries there.
By the way, are you involved in the implementation of these national projects? You may know there's a state agency of national projects, and
Do we have representatives here? No.
may look broadcasting.
Yes, the LNG. Yes. The world first heard about the LNG terminal actually at the EBRD. We had the conference about 3 years ago dedicated to the done jointly with the UK project. It's challenging. I mean, despite what media says, there were some interesting ideas in their portfolio. It's as always in Ukraine, it's the implementation that unfortunately didn't go according to plan. Let's put it this way. What's going to happen now? I don't know. The demand for investment in Ukraine is so high, it's extremely difficult to prioritize. And as I've already said, it's all about coordination. I mean, the Ukrainian government needs to sit together and decide what they want to do as a priority, and then the donor community and the investor community should sit and decide what they can do with the limited or maybe for somebody unlimited resources that they have. And it's simple as that. I mean, the question is, do you build a $1 billion LNG terminal which you don't know where to get LNG from, or you, with the same billion, you do energy efficiency on the demand side and install energy efficient boilers in households and public buildings and decrease consumption of gas, I don't know, 30-50% within 4-6 months. So it's up to the government to make their pick.
From my point of view, I worked for 4 years in a Berlin FDI, state Berlin FDI agency. There is a conflict of interest because they have two functions. They have to promote their national projects on the one hand. On the other hand, they should attract foreign investors and with their own project. And there I see a conflict of interest because all its resources will always go to the national project, and less of the resources from this agency will go really in accompanying foreign investors coming to the country. And that is a structural project, but that is just my personal opinion. More questions? Yes,
please. One question. Does EBRD works only with big institutions, financial institutions, big companies, big projects, or small and middle-sized business has also opportunity or possibility to use financing or, I don't know, some support of EBRD if they go to Ukraine, for example?
We have direct funding, which is, there's no specific number, but let's say over 10-15 million euros is the size of the project. It doesn't really matter how big is the sponsor, is the partner. If the project is bigger than that, then it's more likely to be a direct EBRD involvement and to go through the whole process, which unfortunately can sometimes be a bit long. If it's a smaller project, we do them, but it will be most likely through one of our framework facilities. So where there's a big chunk of money and it's being financed through our partner banks in Ukraine.
Okay, so starting from 15 million.
It's roughly
more or less,
10, 15, 20, it depends on the individual project. If it's a repeat client, it could go up and then again go under the radar of the board of directors. If it's a new client, then even a 10 million project could get all the attention. But in principle, we do fund medium-sized companies. We used to have a small SME, small medium enterprise facility, which financed everything, if I remember correctly, from 300,000 or 500,000 euros. Unfortunately, that facility finished a number of years ago, and we're now in discussions of whether this is something we could launch again.
Because I mean, if we take the German model of economy, where the majority is small, middle-sized companies, and in Ukraine this is a vacuum. We not have so much, so it would be probably a good
we're
way
looking
to.
at this. It's a very good point. We're looking at this actually from two angles. One is promoting SMEs in Ukraine and providing them with the financial instruments, probably the best thing we could do. We are limited in terms that we cannot do this directly. We have to do this via a partner bank in Ukraine, and now I'm back to my favorite topic, the state of the Ukrainian banking system. The other angle is working, for example, with German Mittelstand and trying to work with the SMEs here, inviting them to invest in Ukraine and supporting their investments this way. So trying to work on a bilateral level, supporting them either financially or with a political comfort.
I don't see any more questions. So I return the word to you, Maria. Thank you very much again for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexander, Andreas, Tom, for this discussion. So thank you very much. I would like to say several words. Thank you for all of you for supporting, and every minute that you invest in this day, this conference discussion is very valuable. And I would like to thank our partners, Dentons, for hosting this event in this beautiful office. EBRD for supporting us as an institutional partner, European Pravda as our media partner, and also TV partner Espresso TV and Obozrevatelь, and also the delegation of German companies in Ukraine that supported us, and personally, Alexander, thank you very much for your support. We look forward to meeting you during our next events. The next event will be in New York on 12th of November, then and on 20th of November in Kiev. I hope that this great discussion and this great thoughts that were addressed today will help us to build a new country and to attract more investors to our home country. So thank you very much and welcome to the coffee break. Thank you.
Thank you.